just wasn't there.
Reince, I want to talk to you about, I think, the two most underreported stories of this campaign as far as process goes. We constantly heard about how the Democrats had the Obama turnout operation and they had the data. Republicans were even last night. We had people on TV saying, well, of course, Donald Trump is going to lose tonight because he doesn't have the ground game. He doesn't have the get out. The story of this campaign that now has to be written and will be written is that you had Jared Kushner running a data operation over with the Trump team, and you had the RNC digging extraordinarily deep. We're talking David Plouffe type work. And we saw Sean Spicer yesterday morning to give us a quick briefing.
It was impressive.
I was absolutely blown away about how much money you guys sunk into what turn. You know, because 4 years ago, Mitt Romney had an app that crashed on Election Day. And you're like, are you kidding me? How do you do that? This guy ran Bain Capital, but you guys learned from that. Talk about that.
Well, we were embarrassed 4 years ago. I mean, you can't have a competent national party if you don't have your act together when it comes to data, infrastructure, ground game. We need to know everything about everyone out there, what beer they drink, what car they drive, how much money they make, how many kids they have. Everything about a particular voter. You have to be able to predict how that voter is going to act. And
I saw on the sheet, not to interrupt, but just to tell everybody else here, so Sean handed me voter so-and-so from Pennsylvania. And they have all the things, and then they go, these are the contacts we've made.
That's right.
And they're like 20 contacts. And at number 20,
profile the person.
At the end, it's like, check, go polls today to vote.
Well, we've spent the last 4 years trying to be as good or at least get close to what Barack Obama did. I mean,
which was extraordinary. They were extraordinary.
Yeah. As far as politics goes, what they did in 2012, building off of 2008, was really the example for national parties. But I'd say this was about Donald Trump. It was about the message that he delivered, the discipline that he had, the knowledge and understanding of where the American people were at. He executed the plan, and he did it in a way that was the most unbelievable thing that we've ever seen.
But Reince, when you say it was about Donald Trump and about the message he delivered, what's the message you're talking about? Is this the candidate of the Muslim ban, the candidate who said what he said about women, the candidate who said what he said about Mexicans? Or what do you think his message was? What did people see as his message?
I think his message was freedom, and his message was following through on the promises you make to the American people. While there were ups and downs during the campaign, some of those things that weren't the best things that happened were forgiven because people viewed Donald Trump as the antidote for everything that they hated about politics. And he transcended some of the problems because his message of freedom from the lies and the broken promises and his ability to deliver.
By the way, of both parties.
Made that happen, of both parties.
Both parties, Mike
bookended by the Clintons.
Through the years.
Oh, for over a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
For over a quarter of a century. That's why people came out in droves yesterday, I think. That's part of it. I mean, the frustration in this country. We have a country that's fractured, filled with frustrated people whose dreams and ambitions have been either thwarted or not attained, certainly. What is Donald Trump's first priority in that country, our country, to put the country together? What does he have to do?
I think you saw his first priority was last night. What Joe said was right. Donald Trump last night was no different the second he walked up to that stage than he was 2 hours before, other than the fact that when he was getting ready for that speech, he knew, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to cool the temperature. He wanted to calm down the American people and the capital markets and the entire world and say, wait a second. I'm going to be the president for everyone in this country. I know what this responsibility is. I'm not going to brag about where we're at. The old fights are over. You didn't hear a thing about it because he wanted to do it. He's the one that said, no, we're going to write a speech that brings people together tonight. He did it.
We heard that broad message of unity, Mr. Chairman, but there are a lot of people this morning waking up in fear. There are Muslim Americans who heard the way he talked about Muslims coming to this country or not being allowed to come to this country. Latinos who are worried that some of their family members may perhaps be deported under a President Trump. What do you say to those people who listened to his rhetoric for a year and a half and have good reason to be scared today?
Well, I think everyone learns as they go through this process. You know, he said that it wasn't a matter of banning a particular religion from the United States, but it was making sure that if immigration was coming from countries that were harboring terrorism, that we were going to look at that country and perhaps suspend temporarily immigration from that country. He's not calling for mass deportation. He said, no, only people who have committed crimes, and then only until all of that is taken care of will we look at what we're going to do next.
By the way, on those 2 points, we were critical of Donald Trump not making the turn. There are issues like that, though, where he actually did make the turn, and he went from Muslim ban, Ben,
subtly,
to saying, went from Muslim ban to suddenly saying it's about Syria, it's about other war-torn countries. I'm not going to have a mass deportation force. It's a narrowing of that. But I think, Ben, it's probably going to be his responsibility to underline that and highlight it so Muslim Americans and Latinos do not fear his presidency.
Two things will send a huge message at the beginning. Number one is who he appoints to his administration and cabinet, and what he does with his 100-day plan. You've been watching very carefully the races around the country. What would you recommend to him as the 100-day plan to get legislation through to resolve the concerns they expressed?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't get into too much of it today. It's only been a few hours, Ben, and I think, first of all, we want to slow things down a little bit. But he's working with the members of both parties, working with leadership of the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, finding out, obviously where each side is willing to go in order to get something done. I think Joe was right before. He's the person who likes to make deals. He thinks that there's a way, and he's right, that we can get our spending under control, that we can get the debt under control. But to Willie's point before, I just want to say, half my family lives in Greece, and I got a few calls from my cousins in Greece and about last night and what happened. So it was like, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. The whole world feels like, in many ways, they're losing the sovereignty of their own country. And you saw that in Britain, you see it throughout Europe. Right. People just feel like there's nothing wrong with protecting the sovereignty of America while still being a friendly partner throughout the world. And I think if there was something that I could kind of portray about Donald Trump, that's where he's at. He wants to protect the sovereignty of America, be a partner throughout the world, live in peace, but also put more money in people's pockets, get jobs back. And that's the message I think people saw out on the campaign trail.
Are you going to be chief of staff?
No, not a single tiny little bit conversation about such a thing.
There hasn't been a conversation?
None.
Would you consider it?
No. Listen, first of all, if the President of the United States asks you to do anything...
By the way, he hasn't slept yet. I don't know.
I know. Right. I'm
except really for 90 minutes on a chair last night.
Yeah.
No,
but yeah, if you're asked...
That's something that we're even talking about. Look, if they ask you to go, walk a dog, I guess you got to consider it.
Got to consider it. It's very interesting.
Go back to sleep.
It's very interesting what Reince just said, because it sounds a lot like what Theresa May said, the new Prime Minister of Britain,
right?
When she spoke to the Tories in Birmingham. The takeaway line was, "A citizen of the world is a citizen of nowhere," which is, again, talking about sovereignty. What we're doing now in the United States with this election is what Great Britain did with Brexit. And you talk about a historical parallel. Thatcher elected in 1979 in Great Britain, Ronald Reagan in 80.
All right. Reince Priebus, thank you very much.